This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Martelli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. Tensions flaring in the South China Sea after another confrontation between Philippine and Chinese vessels. But foreign ministers at ASEAN Plus Three push for unity on urgent energy and supply chain challenges. President Lee Jae-myung warns that South Korea's heavy investment in property risks a Japan-style asset bubble and a painful collapse. Also, surge in popularity of China-origin open-source models spurs anxiety in Washington. U.S. officials threaten sanctions and other action against Chinese AI startups. And Iranian-backed Houthis say that they've hit Saudi oil tankers, opening a new threat to global oil supplies alongside the Strait of Hormuz. Also tonight, Japan's foreign minister holds talks with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as the two countries commemorate 70 years since normalizing diplomatic relations. And China's new AI-generated drama boom is hitting a roadblock, with netizens lamenting the rise of so-called AI faces that are making shows uncomfortable to watch. Foreign ministers from China, Japan and South Korea renewing their pledges to boost cooperation at the ASEAN Plus Three meeting in Manila. But China has urged the bloc to close ranks in the face of growing geopolitical uncertainty. Japan said that the ASEAN Plus Three framework must do more to tackle shared challenges, with disruptions in the Middle East putting further strain on food and energy supplies. Now, South Korea also vowing to pursue peace on the Korean peninsula.
The Republic of Korea will continue to make every effort to achieve peaceful coexistence and shared prosperity on the Korean peninsula by resuming dialogue with the DPRK.
Talks are taking place on the back of renewed confrontations in the South China Sea. The Philippines has accused the China Coast Guard of firing a water cannon and carrying out dangerous maneuvers against its vessels near the Scarborough Shoal. Beijing, though, says it expelled two Philippine vessels that intruded into the disputed waters, despite repeated warnings. So this marks the second such incident involving the two Asian neighbors this week. Now, for more, let's bring in CNA senior correspondent Han Yuguan live from Shanghai. Yuguan, so we are seeing here yet another confrontation in the South China Sea. We've got Beijing and Manila trading blame. So, Yuguan, what has China said about the situation?
Well, China essentially said that its Coast Guard drove away Philippine government vessels from what it claims as its territory. So, according to the China Coast Guard spokesperson, the Philippine vessels ignored repeated warnings before entering what China considers its territorial waters. It says the Coast Guard took measures, including tracking, intercepting, and expelling the vessels. Beijing described the actions as professional, lawful, and necessary to defend its territorial sovereignty and maritime rights. The Philippines, of course, has its own account of the incident. As you said, has accused China of aggressive action in disputed waters. Its foreign ministry also says the country's provisional arrangement with China does not require Manila to seek permission for resupply missions. The ministry added that the understanding does not allow the boarding and inspection of Philippine vessels or concede sovereignty. This, of course, directly contradicts China's view of the arrangement.
Now, beyond the maritime disputes, ASEAN Plus Three, well, they also focused on broader regional cooperation. So tell us, how is China positioning itself, as countries grapple with growing geopolitical uncertainty?
Well, China is presenting regional cooperation, economic integration as the way forward amid growing global uncertainty. At the China-ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, Foreign Minister Wang Yi highlighted areas including trade, supply chain, green development, and people-to-people exchanges. He also said that the South China Sea issue should not become an obstacle to China-ASEAN relations, calling for countries to continue managing differences through dialogue and accelerate the consultations on the Code of Conduct. Wang Yi did not attend the ASEAN Plus Three and East Asia Summit, and also the ASEAN Regional Forum foreign ministers' meetings. Some watchers see it as a snub, but according to his own foreign ministry spokesperson today, it was merely a scheduling issue. Attending on his behalf was his Chinese vice foreign minister. In her remarks, she says the world is entering a period of turbulence and calls for joint efforts to address common challenges. Let's take a listen.
当前世界进入新的动荡变革期，中东局势影响外溢，能源、粮食供应链安全与韧性受到冲击，传统和新兴安全挑战复杂交织，地区国家携手应对挑战的呼声更高，聚焦合作发展的意愿更加强烈，维护和平稳定环境的诉求也更加的迫切。
So Beijing's broader message is that countries should respond to uncertainty through cooperation and dialogue while keeping regional development and stability at the center of their agenda. That message is pretty consistent with its previously stated positions. In many ways, protecting stability or preventing chaos or luan is a key concern for China both at home and abroad. If you've been in China long enough, you'll see that stability is front and center in the thinking of Chinese leaders and shapes many of their policy decisions. It is in part shaped by China's own historical experience, where periods of disorder and instability have left a deep imprint on political thinking. So that statement there is more than just lip service. It reflects a broader worldview in Beijing about the importance of maintaining order and continuity. Oteli?
Good speaking with you. Thanks so very much for that update. CNA's senior correspondent Tan Yu-Guan in Shanghai. And for more on Japan's position at today's ASEAN meetings, we're going to speak with CNA's senior correspondent Michio Ishida now. She's joining us live from Tokyo. So, Mitch, we've heard the Chinese perspective. What about Japan's stance in terms of enhancing regional stability as well as cooperation?
Well, Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi outlined 3 points he stressed in the series of ASEAN meetings, including Japan plus ASEAN. He said, ASEAN is the linchpin for Japan's vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific, and he would like to strengthen cooperation in that area and confirmed support from ASEAN. He said they discussed the specifics to enhance energy supply cooperation. That's on the back of the uncertainty in the Middle East. He was able to receive support from ASEAN partners to work together in regional and international concerns. He mentioned in particular North Korea's missile and nuclear development, the abduction of Japanese. He also said that they discussed Myanmar, Iran, and Ukraine. He said he will not condone attempts to unilaterally change the status quo, in particular in the East China Sea and South China Sea. But he did not name a particular country. Here's more from Mr. Motegi.
ASEAN Plus Three が AOIP の推進と主流化に向け緊密に連携できるよう日中間の調整国としての役割をしっかり果たしていきたいと思います。同時に ASEAN Plus Three 各国が直面する共通の課題解決に向けて協力していく意義の大きさも改めて強調したいと思います。エネルギー、食料安全保障、高齢化、防災といった課題の解決のため ASEAN Plus Three の枠組みのポテンシャルを生かしていきたいと思います。
Now, Michio, the Japanese foreign minister, well, he also met with his Chinese and Russian counterparts. So basically what came out of those talks?
Yes, they were not official meetings, but Mr. Motegi told Japanese reporters he talked briefly with his Chinese and Russian counterparts. With Foreign Minister Wang Yi, he said, without any an interpreter present, they discussed bilateral ties, but he declined to share any details. You see, Japan-China ties sour since Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi hinted of possibly exercising collective self-defense in the event of a Taiwan contingency last November, which angered Beijing. Beijing then discouraged Chinese from traveling to Japan. It's called for an export ban of dual-use equipment to Japan and stepped up drills close to Japan, with the latest over the weekend in what Japan claims took place in its exclusive economic zone, or near Okinotorishima. And China was holding a drill together with Russia. As the talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Mr. Motegi said they talked during a gala dinner. Japan slapped sanctions on Russia since its war in Ukraine. Relations have since soured. But currently, there are signs of government-to-government interaction and cultural exchanges taking place, which Mr. Motegi said he's discussed with Mr. Lavrov. But he did not share with reporters whether they talked about the drill and Japan's EEZ. And he summed up, Japan will act based on what's vital to its sovereignty.
Many thanks for that. CNA senior correspondent Michio Ishida reporting to us live from Tokyo. Now, Singapore and the U.S. are exploring ways to deepen cooperation in defense, technology and AI. Singapore Foreign Affairs Minister Vivian Balakrishnan met U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the sidelines of the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Manila. Now, Dr. Balakrishnan notes how economic links are deep and investment ties strong, and this reflects the confidence they have in each other's economies. He adds that the U.S. has been an important partner of ASEAN for decades, and its continued engagement in the region reinforces peace, stability, and prosperity. It also creates new opportunities for cooperation in areas such as the digital economy and energy security. And we'll have more coverage from the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and related meetings in Manila, including a press conference by Philippine Foreign Minister Maria Teresa Lazaro on Asia tonight. A Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi wrapping up ASEAN meetings in Manila, and he heads to Kyrgyzstan for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO. He will be holding talks with his counterparts on regional and global developments, as well as cooperation across key sectors. Now, the Foreign Ministers' meeting is also aimed at preparing for this year's Leaders' Summit, which will mark the group's 25th anniversary. On the sidelines of the meeting, Mr. Wang is also expected to hold talks with Kyrgyzstan's leaders on bilateral ties, the Belt and Road cooperation, and other issues concerning the region. South Korean investigators have raided the country's election commission after detecting evidence that officials had falsified voter turnout during local elections in June. A prosecution police task force reportedly executed a search and seizure warrant at the National Election Commission's office in Gwacheon, south of Seoul. Now, a spokesperson of the joint task force says that some election watchdog employees altered turnout figures in the commission's computer system without informing their superiors. Dozens of polling stations ran out of ballot papers during the 3rd June elections, causing widespread disruption. The incident led to the resignation of National Election Commission Chief Ru Tae-ak and sparked protests calling for the election to be rerun. We're going to go for a short break now, but coming up on East Asia tonight, Hyundai reports a 21% drop in second quarter profit amid mounting headwinds in the auto sector. Plus, Malaysia teaming up with Hong Kong to create a framework for dual listings on the two stock exchanges. Hello again. We have your business news lined up for you with Roland. And Roland, I want to talk about the Korean automaker Hyundai. Apparently, its report card is out, and apparently management is positive about new prospects.
You are right. I mean, despite higher prices for key raw materials, management keeping its full-year guidance intact and expects a stronger second half. Hyundai Motor's profit dropped sharply in the second quarter as weaker vehicle sales, production disruptions and higher costs offset support from a weaker currency. Now, it posted operating profit of $1.98 billion for the April to June period, missing analyst estimates. Revenue rose 2% from a year ago to $33.5 billion. The weaker results underscores mounting pressure on the auto industry with rising energy and raw material costs, as well as supply chain disruptions linked to US tariffs and the war in the Middle East. Hyundai is also facing stiffer competition in its home market as global rivals ramp up their EV and software offerings. Now, Tesla plans to roll out a new version of its full self-driving software in South Korea. The country's imported vehicle market has also become increasingly competitive, with China's BYD overtaking Lexus and Volvo as the fourth biggest imported foreign brand. Hyundai reported a 16% plunge in second quarter vehicle sales in South Korea, while US sales were little changed from a year earlier. Hyundai says economic uncertainty will persist and competition in the industry will be tougher. The investors brushing aside the weak earnings report and focusing on Hyundai's push into so-called physical AI as it steps up investments in robotics and autonomous driving. The stock ending the day up 3.35%. It's gained more than 44% year to date. Still in Korea, President Lee Jae-myung sounded caution on the country's remarkably large investment in real estate, saying it may be headed towards a similar market bubble and collapse experienced by Japan. South Korea's property woes stem from soaring home prices in Seoul, driving up costs in outlying districts. Apartment prices in Seoul have risen for 76 consecutive weeks as at mid-June, defying a series of property cooling measures. The Bank of Korea and financial regulators are concerned that rapid price appreciation could fuel household debt and speculative buying. The government is grappling with another challenge. Now, presidential policy chief says the country's AI-driven semiconductor boom has lifted economic growth to its fastest pace in more than 20 years. And those gains and excess liquidity could once again flow into the property market, adding further pressure on home prices. Meantime, President Lee urging to prioritize stabilizing the property market. And this comes as the government gears up to announce a revision to property holding taxes. A strong semiconductor exports boosted South Korea's economy in the second quarter, underscoring the country's role as a key beneficiary of the global AI boom. Advanced estimates show growth beat expectations on year at 3.7%. Now, on quarter, the economy expanded by 0.6%, also more than expected, though a sharp deceleration from the 1.8% growth in the first quarter. But it adds to a run of strong economic growth numbers that's prompted repeated outlook upgrades. The chip boom has helped the economy offset lower construction investments, even in the face of a tightening cycle. The Bank of Korea hiked interest rates last week for the first time in more than 3 years. Remember, inflation in the country is creeping up, while the Korean won has steadily depreciated. Let's take a look at the Korean won reacting to the growth numbers. The currency has advanced to its strongest level in about 10 weeks against the greenback. Traders are widely expecting local firms to sell more US dollars ahead of a hawkish Bank of Korea. South Korea's Kospi index ending the day 4.4% higher. Now, that run-up in the stock market is being led by semiconductor stocks. SK Hynix gains on expectations that stronger demand for on-device AI could support sales of advanced memory chips used in premium smartphones. Samsung Electronics' latest product launch also giving the stock a lift. Malaysian and Hong Kong securities regulators have signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at facilitating dual IPO listings in both jurisdictions. Now, products covered include exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, and real estate investment trusts, or REITs. ETFs and REITs approved in Malaysia or Hong Kong may be offered to investors in the corresponding jurisdiction through a secondary listing on the host exchange. The Hong Kong exchange hosts more than 2,900 listed companies, ETFs, and REITs, while Malaysia's Bursa has more than 1,130 similar offerings. The Malaysian Securities Commission said the deal will establish a practical framework to encourage greater cross-border investment, broaden access to both capital markets, and enhance investment opportunities. Both the benchmarks ending in the green after the announcement, the KLCI index up 0.2%, Hang Seng index up 1.3 in Hong Kong. The Trump administration is threatening sanctions against Chinese AI startups, including Moonshot, alleging that they are stealing intellectual property from American frontier AI labs. A White House official says Kimi K3 improperly used American AI models and NVIDIA's advanced chips for training. Michael Kratsios says that Moonshot AI acquired NVIDIA servers and access chips in Thailand, likely to train its AI models, adding that it violated U.S. export control rules by doing so. And he said Moonshot distilled or illegally used Anthropic's Fable to develop its K3 model. The Chinese embassy in Washington says the comments are entirely unfounded, adding that individuals in the U.S. should stop discrediting China's AI achievements. The allegations comes after a week of hype and debate since the Chinese startup launched Kimi K3. The powerful model has abilities rivaling Anthropic's Claude and OpenAI's ChatGPT. Now, CNA's Sarah El-Khaldi looks at how it's shifting the balance of the global tech race.
Moonshot AI's Kimi K3 is the latest Chinese offering, seen as a credible challenge to America's dominance in AI models. Its edge comes from a combination of strong performance and lower costs. The company said its product is only behind Anthropic's top-tier Claude Fable 5 and OpenAI's GPT 5.6 Sol, a claim supported by independent research. Kimi K3 is also larger than flagship models launched by other Chinese AI firms such as Zippo AI and DeepSeek. So here's how Moonshot AI's latest release stacks up against its U.S. counterparts. Artificial analysis says Kimi K3 costs an average of 95 U.S. cents per task. That's almost a third less than Fable 5 with a price tag of $2.75. And it's still cheaper than GPT 5.6 Sol, which costs more than $1 per task. Chinese firms such as Moonshot AI have had to work around U.S. semiconductor restrictions. That's led them to build competitive models requiring less computing power and hence lower costs. The more affordable price tag could encourage more businesses to use this model, making it harder for American AI leaders to compete. Unlike Claude and ChatGPT, Kimi K3 is an open-weight model. In fact, it's the world's largest, so it can be downloaded and run and customized by users. That's especially attractive to organizations with strict privacy and security requirements. This latest offering is narrowing the perceived gap between Chinese and American AI models. Experts say China's AI developers are still behind the U.S. leaders, but are catching up faster than many expected. And the increased competition is coming at a tricky time for Anthropic and OpenAI. They're under pressure to demonstrate sustainable revenue as they prepare for potential blockbuster listings on U.S. stock markets. For CNN Explains, I'm Sarah Hawley.
And I'll be back a little later on. For now, back to you, Otelli.
All right, looking forward to our chat on the AI arms race happening in just a short while. For now, we are going to go for a break now, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, Japan and the Philippines work to ramp up ties as the two countries mark 70 years of diplomatic relations today. And we'll be speaking to Tomohiko Taniguchi, former special advisor to the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, for more insights on how the partnership has evolved over the years. Also, a new flashpoint opens up as the U.S.-Iran conflict expands beyond the Gulf and into the Red Sea. Yemen's Houthi rebels say they launched attacks on Saudi shipping in the waterway. You're watching East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. Tensions flaring in the South China Sea after another confrontation between Philippine and Chinese vessels But foreign ministers at ASEAN Plus Three push for unity on urgent energy and supply chain challenges. Also, surge in popularity of China-origin open-source models spurs anxiety in Washington. U.S. officials threaten sanctions and other action against Chinese AI startups. And Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis say they have hit Saudi oil tankers, opening a new threat to global oil supplies alongside the Strait of Hormuz and expanding the ongoing U.S.-Iran conflict beyond the Gulf. Japan and the Philippines are marking 70 years since the normalisation of diplomatic relations between the two countries. And to commemorate the occasion, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. invited Japan's Foreign Minister Motegi Toshimitsu to the presidential palace in Manila. And the pair discussed strengthening security cooperation and exchanging interests of building economic cooperation and supply chains resilience. Now, the talks took place on the sidelines of the ASEAN gathering in Manila. Mr. Marcos made a state visit to Japan back in May, where he met Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Now, the leaders signed an agreement to elevate ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership, and they also agreed to promote the transfers of defense equipment and strengthen security cooperation. Now, lots to unpack here. So for more, let's bring in Tomohiko Taniguchi, Special Advisor to the Fujitsu Future Studies Center and previously former Special Advisor to the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Well, thanks for joining us this evening, Dr. Taniguchi. So this year marks 70 years of diplomatic ties and relationship, has never been deeper. Do you think this essentially is the biggest reset in 7 decades? And what is the single most profound transformation in that relationship?
Actually, the bilateral relationship has been warm and good for many decades. Indeed, in 2017, January 2017, when then Prime Minister Abe visited Davao City, Mindanao, which was President Duterte's hometown, the welcome that he received was the single warmest in Mr. Abe's memory. So Duterte-Abe relationship was extremely good, but the challenge at the time was that President Duterte was not so much interested in bringing Filipino-Japanese relationship in the context of the U.S.-led alliance network. President Marcos is very much different. He knows that the value of the Philippines lies in the fact that Philippines and Japan are both close security partners to the United States. And seen from the Japanese perspective, few countries are more important than the Philippines because together with the Philippines, Japan could sort of sandwich the most important strategic place of Taiwan. So that has been reinforced by the fact that the Philippines will soon buy some of the Japanese frigate ships, and it's going to symbolize the very much deepened security relationship between the two nations.
Yeah, so when we look at the rapid expansion of security, economic and technological cooperation, between Japan and the Philippines, you talked about the underlying forces, but can you elaborate on that is shaping this partnership today?
Right. Today actually marks the 70th anniversary since the establishment of the bilateral relationship. The whole year 2026, therefore, has been designated as the year for friendship between the two nations. But if you look at what the Philippines have been doing lately, they've been expanding their diplomatic reach towards India, for instance, and bringing India to this part of the world. And so the Philippines diplomacy is very much instrumental in widening and enriching the basically US-led alliance network, which is definitely going to benefit Japan, obviously.
Now, in terms of Japan's identity, they've often described as a peace-oriented nation, but we're seeing that Japan is being playing a more active security role across the Indo-Pacific. And how do you see Japan's strategy, now shaping support for the Philippines in terms of upholding this rules-based order in the South China Sea?
When Prime Minister Abe proposed his signature concept of FOIP, which is for Free and Open Indo-Pacific 10 years ago in Nairobi, Kenya, the implication was very much obvious, indicative that there is a country that was not interested in maintaining the Indo-Pacific region in a free and open way. So it was very much a rhetorical sort of naming. And 10 years since, the Chinese military prowess, military power has become even more awesome. And it is obvious that no nation, even the United States alone, could tackle the growing military presence of China. So it is Japan that badly needs alliance partners and security partners. So it explains that why Japan has reached out to the countries such as the Philippines, Australia, and India and the like. Indeed, Australia is going to buy the cutting-edge frigates from Japan. So the security relationship is now being enriched by those countries signing up with Japan.
Security cooperation, well, that often dominates the headlines. But if we look ahead 10 years, Dr. Taniguchi, what are some of the other areas of cooperation that could be even more important than defense in defining the relationship between Japan and Philippines?
One thing that I should not forget mentioning is that the number of people from the Philippines is steadily on the rise in Japan, and the trend is going to continue. So you will see a lot of Filipinos, people from the Philippines, will be working across Japan, and with that, the culture and food and so on and so forth will be found more in Japan. So people-to-people connection is steadily being enriched. And I think that's changing the landscape of the bilateral relationship.
Always good speaking with you. Thanks so very much for your time and thoughts. Tomohiko Taniguchi, Special Advisor to the Fujitsu Future Studies Center and also former Special Advisor to the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. A new flashpoint opening up in the Red Sea as the US-Iran conflict expands beyond the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Yemen-based Houthis say they struck 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea, accusing them of violating a blockade imposed on Saudi Arabia earlier this week. Well, the attack increasing fears of another choke point on global oil supplies, already hit by US and Iran's earlier blockades on the Strait of Hormuz. Saudi Arabia has been attempting to move oil supplies via alternative routes, including the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. But the Houthis control areas near the waterway. Now, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has alleged that the Houthis were tricked into attacking Red Sea shipping by Iran. The Houthi rebels are close allies of Iran, which traded fire with the US for a 12th straight night. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says that they stopped 3 oil tankers from passing through the Strait of Hormuz. President Donald Trump has warned that the US would strike an Iranian bridge or power plant for each ship Iran shoots at. Now let's go to Blake Sifton, who is joining us live from Tel Aviv. Blake, the naval blockade by the Houthis risks this second choke point in the Red Sea. How would this, you think, impact global oil supplies?
Good evening, Otelli. Well, on Monday, the Houthi movement in Yemen announced this maritime blockade of Saudi Arabia. On Tuesday, they warned international shipping companies that they would be targeted if they loaded cargo at Saudi ports. And now today, they have acted on those threats. They say carrying out drone and missile strikes on 2 Saudi-owned oil tankers. Now, of course, the fear now is that another choke point for global energy supplies will be paralyzed in addition to the Strait of Hormuz. When the war with Iran began, Saudi Arabia diverted millions of barrels of oil per day away from the Strait of Hormuz to their Red Sea coast, and that oil is now in jeopardy. Oil tankers in the Red Sea appear to be heeding the Houthis' warnings. On Tuesday, 3 oil tankers took U-turns away from the Yemeni coast. On Wednesday, a further 5 tankers diverted their course away from the Yemeni coast and north. Now, instead of going through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the much more direct route to the Arabian Sea, these tankers are now headed north to the Suez Canal, and a much longer and more expensive route through the Mediterranean and around the coast of Africa. Now, despite these threats, however, shipping data shows that 2 Chinese super tankers do appear to be headed through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait today, and they are believed to be carrying a combined 4 million barrels of oil from Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia has not publicly requested military support from the United States to confront this new threat, but on Tuesday, President Trump warned that if the Houthis attempted to blockade the Red Sea, that they would be, in his words, taken care of by the U.S. military. But there are reports that some U.S. officials are concerned that if the U.S. military were to become involved in an air campaign against the Houthis, it could further strain their resources while they're at war with Iran.
Well, meantime, strikes between U.S. and Iran continue to escalate. How do you think this is going to affect diplomatic efforts to end the conflict?
Well, that's right. As the U.S. carries out a 12th night of strikes against Iran, and Iran continues to carry out strikes targeting U.S. assets in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan, there are concerns that the situation could escalate even further. Today, we heard from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He said that Iran wants to make a deal, but that they are unable to stick to the deals that they make. And he warned that as long as Iran doesn't make a deal, the U.S. will continue to escalate their strikes, saying they're going to continue to pay a price. And every night, the price gets higher and higher and higher. Now, President Trump, of course, has threatened to strike bridges and power plants in Iran for every ship that is attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran, for their part, have said that if that were to happen, they would retaliate by targeting infrastructure in the region, including oil, gas, and electrical facilities. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi put it simply, saying, "Our defense doctrine is clear, an eye for an eye." Now, in a possible other sign of coming escalation, Israeli media are reporting that the U.S. has informed Israel that they will soon begin deploying heavy bombers for strikes against Iran. It's believed that those heavy bombers would be used in strikes targeting nuclear sites in Iran, including the Pickaxe Mountain nuclear site, in what would be a major escalation.
Many thanks for that update on U.S.-Iran war. Blake Sifton for CNA from Tel Aviv. Well, time now for another short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight. Chinese AI firms racing to raise money through share offerings as they race to keep pace with U.S. rivals and cash in on the global AI boom. And Japan swelters under yet another day of extreme heat, with heat stroke alerts in place across 39 prefectures. Hello again, you're watching East Asia Tonight, and as promised, we've got more business news with Roland. And Roland, sentiment apparently recovering for tech shares in China?
Yes, it is. But the tech sell-off has eased somewhat. The pace of listing of semiconductor and AI companies, that's picking up. A Chinese chip testing equipment instrument maker, SeaMite, is reportedly looking to list in Hong Kong, just months after it raised more than $300 million in its Shanghai IPO. Now, SeaMite's shares have surged more than 2,200% since April, catapulting its market cap to more than $29 billion. It's one of many firms that are looking to tap on investor demand amid the AI wave. More than 20 Chinese AI firms have listed in Hong Kong this year, including AI model startups Jipu AI and Minimax. That has brought in a bumper crop of proceeds for bourses in mainland China and Hong Kong for the first half of this year. Moonshot, DeepSeek, and Giga AI are also several other AI model firms considering going public. Now, that's as mainland China gears up for its largest listing since 2010, when memory chip maker CXMT goes public in Shanghai on Monday. The boom has also attracted the attention of some of China's high-profile funds, which now want a piece of the action. That's as they seek to stem their losses this year over a poor showing by consumer stocks, with several dumping them in favor of AI-related firms. But recent market volatility in global AI and chip stocks, which have also spread to China, has sparked concerns over the fund's increased exposure to them. And that's as consumer staples outperformed chip and tech stocks over the past, but with liquor giants lifting the spirits.
Well, big tech just delivered another blowout earnings season, but this time the market isn't just cheering. Alphabet has just posted its first negative free cash flow since listing, raising a bigger question. Is big tech spending too much on AI or not enough? Of course, Roland is the man to break it all down for us. So Alphabet has reported strong revenue and profit growth, but its free cash flow turned negative for the first time. Help us understand what exactly happened.
Well, basically, Alphabet spent more in cash than it actually generated. So that's what that's not happened to it since it became a publicly listed company. And the main reason for this is, of course, AI infrastructure spending. You've heard me talk about this a lot. And its quarterly capex spending had actually doubled to $45 billion for the latest quarter. So they're pouring money into data centers, into the physical AI things that actually make the AI models work. And they're still raising spending on that for the rest of the year. So it's really a shift for companies or tech companies that used to rely on, say, advertisements on their platforms without having to spend a lot of money. It certainly sounds as if AI companies these days are turning into so-called heavy industrial companies because they actually have to spend a lot in order to get that revenue in.
So, but this isn't just a Google story, is it?
No, it's not. It's certainly not. Google or Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, they're all pouring money on a large scale. Now, together, they are estimated to spend more than $725 billion this year alone. And then there's another layer that most people don't know about. Analysts have found that these companies actually have a huge amount of off-balance sheet commitments to the tune of $1.6 trillion. 1.6 trillion, that's up eightfold in the last 4 years ago. Now, this debt isn't due tomorrow, but it certainly does show you that the real financial commitment of these AI companies towards actually building out AI models and data centers that's actually not shown in their balance sheet.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess the question about this so-called bigger danger, right, is it whether the companies are overspending or risk underspending?
Yes, that is the central dilemma. I mean, the underspending camp, they look back in history and they think back to the tech boom, telecoms boom in the early 2000s when there was overcapacity of build-out of fiber optic cables, and that led to a lot of companies going bust. So if AI doesn't actually generate the revenues, that data centers might actually go that same way as well. Now, for the overspending camp, well, they are saying that the bigger risk is actually hesitating, not spending, because these companies actually have genuine demand contracts. There is actual need for cloud servers, for cloud capacity and cloud computing. And if you don't build fast enough, well, then your rival is probably going to build faster and then take over your business. So essentially, management at these firms are saying that it's better to be early than to be late and to overspend. But of course, whether that bet is the right bet, that's what investors around the world are trying to figure out.
Okay, so then, I mean, investors themselves, I mean, how can they measure whether the AI investing, is it doing well or not?
Yeah, so you don't use the usual, numbers like, for example, the number of subscribers to AI services, whether they pay for that subscription or not. What investors should be looking at are 4 key metrics. That's AI-related revenue, its market share, the productivity gains from more advanced AI models, as well as the cash generation capacity of these AI companies. So at the end of the day, if you're not generating enough cash, if you're not generating enough returns for that capital spending that you're putting in, well, and that capital spending keeps rising and you're not getting your revenues, I think investors at some point are going to lose patience.
Well, thanks so very much for your insights into the AI arms race. But just before I let you go, Roland, can you just share with us how the oil prices are faring?
Yes, oil prices hitting their highest in more than a month, rising for a fifth day as crisis in the Middle East escalates, threatening oil routes. A quick check on Brent crude, which is currently up 4.7% in late Asian trade, $98.50 a barrel. U.S. market of West Texas Intermediate $90.10, and that's up 3.7%. Now, Iran has vowed to keep striking the region as long as it remains under attack. The war spreads to new fronts, like Tehran's Houthi allies attacking Saudi Arabia shipping in the Red Sea.
And Japan bracing for another day of extreme heat, with temperatures in some cities, including Nagoya and Kyoto, forecast to reach 40 degrees Celsius. Weather officials warn that such intense heat can pose a serious risk to health. Heat stroke alerts are now in place across 39 of Japan's 47 prefectures. Well, forecasters say that the country is experiencing a second consecutive day of what's known as kokoshobi, or a brutally hot day. Officials in Tokyo say that more than 450 people were hospitalized for heat-related illnesses yesterday. That's the highest daily figure since 2010. Authorities say one person had died and 4 others in critical condition. A new form of dramas is flooding social media platforms in China. Nearly 222,000 AI-generated short dramas and comics were launched in the first half of the year in mainland China. Demand, however, falling short of expectations, as local media reports less than 6% of the works achieving widespread viewership. That means more than 90% of the works fail to gain market attention. Now, discussions focusing on the discomfort viewers have watched, so-called AI faces, with netizens reporting that almost all the male and female protagonists lack realism and have stiff expressions and empty eyes. Well, for some viewers, the AI appearances have even caused inexplicable discomfort and physical aversion. Experts say that the brain triggers a psychological rejection when it receives contradictory signals of, quote, a real person and not a real person. They added that AI still struggles to fully simulate the subtleties of a real person, such as pupil dilation, facial muscle movements, and micro-expressions. Have you ever wondered what your pet is really thinking? Well, in South Korea, some owners are turning to tarot cards for answers. And here is how it works at this fortune-telling parlor in Seoul. The dog touches a card or sniffs at one, and the tarot reader interprets the card. She claims they reveal everything from emotions to possible health concerns. Now, the service is driven by a surge in pet ownership. 3 in 10 households in South Korea are raising pets, up from 17% in 2010. A reading costs $14, and a fortune teller says no client has ever limited themselves to just one session.
점점점 반려견이나 반려묘 또는 반려동물들을 같이 살면서 그들과의 관계에서 가족과 같다는 생각을 하게 되거든요. 누구보다도 가장 가까운 친구고 나의 파트너라는 생각을 하게 되더라고요. 그래서 그들과 깊숙한 관계를 맺을 때 얘들이 나한테 어떤 생각을 하는지, 내가 정말 잘해주고 있는지에 대해서 심리적으로 불안한 것들이 굉장히 많아요.
I hope you've enjoyed this Thursday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia and look us up on all our socials. Thanks for watching.